Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Breakthrough to Best Self with Holly and Lauren-Aaliyah. And it's so good to be here with you. We've missed you. But here we are again with another episode. And I think that this one is a very compelling topic. It's
Mhm.
called Leap of Faith, Overcoming Fear and Embracing Change. So we're going to talk a bit about how do we do that? And really, my first question, well, first of all, let me just say, hey, hey, Lauren, how are you today? How's everything in South Africa?
Yeah, all good. We've got grey weather out in Durban today, which, for the rest of my country will know that we are known as the sunshine, the funshine province. Well, not today. We've had a couple of days of grey rain, but hey, I feel good. I feel good. And like you said, Halls, a good topic. So good to chat
Yeah,
through change. There's a lot of change going on in the world around us all the time.
yes.
And I think in particular, it's February 2025, whenever you're watching this video, recording in 2025. And yeah, just in different ways, lots of change, lots of people navigating change. It's one of those things that's the most certain next to taxes and death, right? Change is going to
Change.
be certain. Yeah. Hans, let's
Absolutely.
get into it. Let's get right into
Yeah.
today's episode. You got what's on your mind as far as
Well,
change goes?
let's talk a little bit. Let's first talk about why does change feel so hard? Why does change feel so hard?
Yeah, it's a good
Easy topic. You could just spend 2 minutes on this.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, well, let's talk about, what our experience has been because like you say, for most of us, it's not the easiest thing in the world. And more often than not, we do feel some resistance to change. I think, the more we grow and become more self-aware and more trusting of ourselves and perhaps more trusting of the universe or of God or of our faith, for some people, maybe change is easier than others. But most of us tend to feel some resistance. So let's talk about a few reasons why. First of all, your brain is like hardwired for survival, right? So the brain is hardwired for survival, not for success. And I think this is interesting point. We are wired to survive, not necessarily wired to succeed. Now, that's interesting because if you have the fear of the unknown, even though it may be potentially successful, the fear that you may not survive will keep you comfortable where you are because that's known. So, that fear of the unknown and the way that our brain is wired to survive, those two things can certainly come together and leave us going, okay, I'm not so sure about this. So, that's one
You
reason,
know,
Halls. Yeah.
well, you know what's interesting? I just want to make an observation on that. Back in the day, when survival was king, that was what I guess we all are always trying to survive, but when, it was there were a lot of things that could prevent that from happening. Wouldn't that be considered success? Isn't it interesting that we separate that out now, survival and success? But back in the old days, survival was success. It was the
Right.
ultimate success.
Right. You either you lived and survived or you were eaten by, saber-toothed tiger or killed by the
Right.
it's not very successful. But let's talk about this piece as well. Just going back to your question about why does change sometimes feel so hard. I don't know if this has happened to you, but you sit with so many thoughts trying to make sense of the change. Okay, so you checking out the pros and the cons, you rationalizing, should I change, is it logical, does it make sense. We're doing a lot of internal talking around change, and we get to planning just now. So this is different even from planning, but just in the ruminating thoughts
Oh
about
yeah.
the or against change, logic, rationalizing it, right? How many
Mhm.
times has that kept you not moving forward in change? Or just logic.
Oh
We all,
yeah. So that term analysis paralysis comes to me, and I'm thinking, Oh my goodness, how many times have I thought through something over and over again? Again, planning is still a great thing, but how many times have I ruminated over a potential change and found myself not being able to make any change because I was analyzing it to death? And
Right.
yeah, that's happened to me many times.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting about that? And I guess one of the reasons that we can get stuck in that space, which you call, analysis paralysis, get stuck in that trap is because we're waiting for a guarantee. Okay. So the one thing
Oh
about
yeah.
future, and change obviously is not often, about how we're going to be in this moment. Change means what am I going to be like in the next moment, whether it's a change I'm making for 5 minutes from now or a change that is impacting 5 days or 5 years from now. Change is connected somehow to a future point in time. And the thing about a future point in time is that there are no guarantees, there's no certainty. And so we can
Mm.
get stuck in that space of, paralysis, of stuck in logic and rationalizing and analyzing while we wait for a guarantee. I'm like, oh, just show me a sign that this decision is going to be 100% foolproof. And it stops us from being bold. It stops us from being courageous with change. Okay, so that's definitely another reason is just fear of the future or just good old fear.
Well,
Just
and
fear.
if you think about it, again, we goes back to that survival instinct. Because if I don't know what's around the corner, is something going to eat? Is somebody going to attack me? But at some point, we've got to walk around that corner.
Yeah.
We've got to make those steps. And I think you were talking about something, and I'm sorry I'm digressing just a tad, but you were talking about the difference between the pull and the push of this
Oh,
is
in an earlier
uncomfortable.
conversation. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
before we started
but
recording
you
this podcast.
remind me of that with this
Yeah.
point you make.
So let's talk
You know,
about that. So this is the case for change. And I guess certainly when I'm working with clients in from a life coaching clients that are where we're setting goals and we wanting to achieve certain change, one of the key things I notice when people get sort of stuck in an inability to make change is that where they are right now is it's just a little bit more comfortable, so it's more familiar, and they are not motivated enough to make the change. And there's two types of motivation. There's push motivation, which says that where I am right now is so painful and so uncomfortable that it pushes me out from where I am. And the second type of motivation is pull motivation, which is where I'm going is so compelling and so valuable to me that it pulls me from where I'm at. And so with push motivation, it really is, we talk about pain aversion, about how pain aversion can be a strong motivator. It can be. It can
mhm.
absolutely be. And a lot of the time we making or we deciding on change and we making change based on I really don't like where I'm at. I don't like this job anymore. I don't like this person I'm in a relationship anymore. I don't like this house anymore. I don't like this neighborhood. Like where I'm at is painful. And so pain aversion, motivates change where the pain of being where I'm at is much stronger than the pain of the unknown, the pain of change,
Absolutely.
pain of fear. And so if you want to create change, that's the first sort of setup, is that the pain of staying the same is just greater than the pain of change. That's the first thing, and that will be pushed. That will push you to
And
to
I
change.
feel like that could address that survival mechanism part of our brain, which is like,
Right.
let's go, let's get out of this pain that we're in.
That's right. So one of the things, and I mean, a little bit later on in this discussion today, we'll talk about some of the things you can do that certainly assist you along in making change. But yes, that connecting to the pain of your present situation provides push motivation. And of course, the second thing is pull motivation. And that is just saying that where I'm going, the change I want, the outcomes I want are more valuable and more compelling to me than the situation that I'm in. And that can be a fantastic pull motivation where something excites you so much that you can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
You have literally a dopamine rush of excitement every time you think about it. You wake up, you think about it. You go to sleep, you think about it. It
Yep.
just fills you. And you know, in another podcast, an earlier podcast, we had a discussion about future now and about
Yes.
visualizing and how visualizing your outcomes can pull you towards them. And that's what we're talking about there. But let's get back to, you know, before we get fully into all the wonderful ways you can fuel change, let's just talk a little bit more about another aspect of what holds us back from change. And I'll talk a little bit about the emotional roller coaster of change. Okay. So the fact that our
Yeah.
body, physical body, actually reacts to excitement and anxiety or fear in the exact same way. So the same physiological responses, you know, I was saying to you that when you are being motivated in a pull motivation, you're excited, you're curious, you're
Absolutely.
hopeful, you're being pulled. Now think about feeling lots of excitement about something, Holly, and think about how your head feels and how your tummy feels as an example. And then compare that to fear and anxiety in the way that it settles in your body. It's a very similar feeling. Have you noticed that? How similar excitement and fear can feel?
It does. It feels, you know, as we were talking a bit about this, I really realized at how much that is similar. I had an experience last week when I went off to do more training for my sound therapies, and there was uh, there was some anxiety. There was some anxiety. I'm going to be here with people I don't know. I'm a little bit afraid. I'm a little anxious. I'm very excited to learn these modalities. I'm so excited to learn this, and those sensations in my body were not different at all. They were not different at all. And what it to me, I now I like to frame anxiety more as anticipation for what I'm going to learn or what I'm going to experience. And so that can shift, that can help shift my mindset away from the paralysis, away from the fear of change, and go, like you're saying, be pulled in that direction of this wonderful, whatever it is that we're looking forward to. So
Yeah.
I think there's room, you know, there's room to reframe that anxious feeling that we feel inside of ourselves to something very positive, anticipation for what we might experience coming up.
Right. Yeah. Anticipation, you know, excitement, curiosity, all of that can give us that kind of nervous energy that we feel like, but I think, you know, like butterflies in the pit of my stomach.
Yes.
I get that feeling when I'm excited and looking forward to something, but I get that same thing in the pit of my stomach when I'm really worried and anxious. So I like what you're speaking about. And I guess that's one of the first kind of tips, if you like, one of the strategies we can use to compel ourselves to be motivated towards change is to reframe the physical feelings and the emotions that we're having, and
Yes.
go, it's okay to know that this is not certain. I know that I don't know everything. I know that there are no guarantees. There is uncertainty. So we can certainly hold space for ourselves around that and
Yeah.
acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, but we don't have to be gripped by fear and anxiety, we can be moved forward into that uncertainty, just leaning into it with a sense of curiosity and anticipation,
Ooh,
as you said, of like what is coming, like what's happening. Awesome. And I want to
yeah.
just go back, Holly, and ask you, earlier we spoke about when we have these ruminating thoughts and we get stuck in logic and rationalizing our decisions, we often looking for guarantee, right? So
Mhm.
now let's talk about how does that translate when we get into actual planning and preparation. Because you and I often joke about this, and for those that haven't heard this before, Holly and I make an awesome team on so many projects that we collaborate on, and for many reasons. But one of the central things we've noticed is that we balance each other out when it comes to the right level of planning and preparation
Yes, we
with
do.
taking action. And I'm going to put my hand up and say that I've had many occasions where I just get stuck in the preparation phase. And I know now that it's driven by this fear of the unknown. I know now that it's driven by the desire for guarantees, of which there are none.
Right.
And I'm so busy preparing because I'm convinced there's a perfect plan. Like there's a level at which the plan is just going to go, yes, that's the plan, and it feels great. So I over prepare, I over plan. So let's talk about that preparation versus procrastination, right? What is the
Yeah.
difference? When does planning become an excuse to just delay taking action?
Well, I have to say, we are a great match when it comes to this topic because I'm the opposite. I am jump first and plan later, and that's not always the best way to go either. But you're right. What is the perfect plan? When do you know you have the perfect plan and you can move forward? Is there such a thing? Is there such a thing? You know, Planning is productive. Look, you have taught me that, my friend. You have taught me that. Planning is very productive, but there's a place where we get to where we just need to jump.
Yeah.
And can it become part of, I don't want to use the word avoidance, but we're getting ready. We're getting ready. What does that mean to you, Lauren, when we talk about planning versus procrastination? How does that fit into the way that you think about it now?
Yeah, and certainly, like we're joking, but it certainly is an area of self-development, and it has been for me. And I certainly feel the progress where I notice that I'm stuck in this planning, getting ready, not yet ready. The plan, I'm still perfecting the plan, I'm tweaking the plan, I'm planning the plan, I'm adding to the plan, I'm double checking, is it the right plan? And it can go on and on, right? So I'm really so much more aware and certainly developing skills now where, you called it, at some point you just got to jump. And, you know, the action itself, what I'm finding is that taking that first action, I learn more about whether my plan needs tweaking than when I was stuck with no action. So
Ooh,
you can get stuck in that planning phase, checking and double checking and getting all. Nothing gives you quicker clarity on if your plan is working than taking the first step. Like just take
great
action.
point.
You're
Yep.
soon going to figure out whether your plan is working. And you know what? Most, and we, of course, there are exceptions, and it's worth saying that, of course, there are some, decisions or changes you're going to make that are going to be detrimental and there's no going back. Now, we're not talking about, life threatening changes. But we're talking about everyday navigating life, decisions and choices and changes that we get to make by virtue of being human beings having a human experience. For the most part, we can tweak along the way. Like you
Yes.
can take the step. And that's what I'm learning. Holly, you asked, what am I learning? I'm learning that there's a place for preparation and planning. And then at some point, I need to jump. And the action of jumping or taking a step is going to give me feedback on how my plan is doing. And for the most part, I can tweak it. I can make
Yeah,
adjustments. I can tweak the plan. It's a living plan. So there is no such thing as the perfect plan, purely because all of life is a constant set of changes. And so you'll make a
absolutely.
perfect plan for this step, and then you get there, and that plan's not so perfect anymore because you need a different plan for the next step. So it really is a myth that we sit there and wait for the perfect plan before we take action, right?
I love
And
that.
yeah, and of course, taking into account what you said earlier, we can catch ourselves when we're stuck in that negativity bias. I think that's an important point when we talk about how, we said our brain is hardwired to focus on what could go wrong for survival. As you said, if we didn't consider the things that could go wrong, we wouldn't have succeeded in life. So we have this negativity bias to protect us. And so I'm now noticing when my internal dialogue, the scale is tipped towards negativity of everything that could go wrong and what
Oh,
if could
now you're
happen.
speaking my language, Lauren.
Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what comes up for you.
I've always referred to myself as like the world's worst psychic because everything I predict is going to be the absolute worst possible scenario. Does it ever, it hardly ever turns out that way. But in my mind, you talk about the negativity bias, my mind goes there and it goes to the worst scenario. But you know what? What's really the truth? If we make a mistake, if we have a failure, we're always learning from it. And so
Yeah.
it's not as catastrophic as we would imagine it to be.
Yeah.
And you know what? Let's flip the script. Let's just flip the script. What if it goes right? What if
Yeah.
everything works out? What if the
Yeah.
universe is conspiring for me and not against me?
Yeah. Because it's a 50-50 chance when you're dealing with the unknown, isn't it?
Hmm.
It could go either way. And so where we spend our time and in talking about what am I learning as a person who would plan to the point of procrastination, is that if I get stuck in that negativity and I notice that I've got a whole lot more worst case scenarios, then I do shift to, well, what if it goes right? And then you know what
I
that
love that.
does? The answer to that, I mean, if you really amplify the answer to what if it goes right. So, what if it goes right? And then really paint that picture.
Hmm.
Paint that picture. Now we're talking about fueling that pull motivation. We're talking about fueling that future now, compelling, drawn towards what you want, simply by answering that question. What if it goes right? What if it goes right? Who would you be and how would you be if it goes right? And if that excites you enough, it starts to pull you towards it, and you start to go, oh no, I think this change is absolutely the right one. And I've recently, Holly, and I know you know this, but I'd like to share with those that are watching or listening to the podcast that that was my, very, very recently, I experienced exactly this of needing to make major change, even just around, my work and my job and the way that my work is structured. And having to make changes in how I balance time. I do multiple things with my time.
Yeah.
And I needed to adjust how much time I was spending on one area of my work and give time to another area of my work. The problem that I saw at the time and what kept me stuck for a while was that where I was spending most of my time was currently bringing in most of my income.
Yep.
However, there was such a compelling desire for change and such a compelling desire towards where I wanted to spend more time. The indecision the planning, the worrying came from, but the stuff I want to spend time on is not bringing in enough income yet. The yet is something I've subsequently added because it motivates me to change. But having the skills to notice that I was spending a lot more time making this decision than I needed to, and out of fear, recognizing the fear, recognizing that I could have this big desire to change based on what if it goes right. That picture allowed me to, you said jump. I at some point I've had to make the jump. I'm right in the middle of that change right now. Holly, what comes to mind when you think about situations you've been in, and at some point you just know it's time for
Hmm.
that leap of faith?
When you said you just know, I just got chills on my arms, first of all. But second of all, it's intuition is part of it. It plays a big role in this. So the more we connect to our intuition, and we need to do an episode on intuition just alone. The more that we can read it, and it's not woo woo. Intuition is one of those things that saved our lives when we were out there in the wild. Again, we intuitively could, do I go around that corner? Maybe I actually don't today because I have a feeling. And but intuition is such a big role in I am going in the right direction. And there's noticing mile markers along the way, where something like we call it a synchronicity, something that, how could this actually happen? It has nothing, I don't know how these two things that should never have happened, and they're it's like a light post along the way that says, yeah, you are heading in the right direction. And the intuitive voice inside of us is a little bit quieter than the that ruminating voice you were talking about earlier, Lauren, that can get us, we can get stuck in that ruminating voice. But at some point, it's time to take that leap.
Yeah.
For me, I had a couple of conversations, conversation with my partner. Hey, I am ready to do this. And are we okay? Can we do this? Talking about these things. And then at some point, you just actually do it. I wrote an email. I made a phone call. I did certain things to get the ball rolling in that
Mm.
direction. And that's what the leap looked like for me in those moments. Right
Right.
now, I'm considering a space for my sound healing. That's a leap. That's a leap for me. That's a big jump. But I'm getting close. I'm not in a analysis paralysis, but I'm definitely in the planning because Lauren has taught me how valuable it is to plan. So there's a balance to be had. I believe there's a
Yeah.
balance to be had when you're ready to make that jump of finding, you know, getting the information you need, but having the conversations you need to have, making the phone calls, writing the emails, and then doing it. That's
Mm.
what my experience has been like. And yeah, sounds easier said than done. Maybe it is, but when we do it, there is a that dopamine. Okay, we'll say dopamine. There's brain chemistry happening. There's a dopamine hit. I did it. But there's more than that. I am staying true to myself in my path. And that was a lot for that one small question you gave me, Lauren, but I feel very
Yeah.
strongly about that.
Yeah. Well, you spoke about intuition, and it may, it reminds me of, just I've come to realize in the lessons I've learned about over planning and getting into procrastination around making change, waiting for guarantees, but waiting. not only for the perfect plan, but waiting for the perfect time and
Yeah.
thinking that there's a perfect time. And I think one of the, and I can't remember, I really can't remember where I read this in one of the many books I've read or one of the trainings I've done. I don't know. But it spoke about readiness and timing of being ready. And reading that readiness is a decision, it's not a feeling. I was like, oh, okay, because I'm waiting for the feeling. Okay, it's going to feel ready. This really shook me into, thinking, well, you're ready whenever you say you are. It's like, just decide. Right. And so guided by what you called, intuition. And of course, you've made the case of why it's so important to use our intuition. Others call it a leap of faith, and not just in the sense of kind of the English phrase, but some people lean on their faith. So some people of faith may go, I'll pray about it and I'll wait for it to really settle in my spirit. I will get counsel, spiritual counsel around it. Um, and others may just call it trusting, just
Hmm.
trusting. Whatever that is for you, whether it's an intuitive knowing, whether it's your faith based confirmation in your spirit, or whether it's a universal trusting of the unfolding of things, whatever you call it, you just get to a space and a time where I'm ready and you decide. And I think that's really been helpful for me to shift from, the timing of readiness versus the decision of readiness. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of people in the world, and many of us can think about so many people that have built what we may consider very successful lives. Of course, we don't know what goes on beneath what we see, but certainly on the surface of things. And, you know, um, well, I guess it depends on what you are striving for, because for everything you're striving for, there's an example of somebody who has achieved it. And I can bet you at some point they took a leap of faith, they
Oh,
jumped.
yeah.
And
Yep.
so if you're inspired by a life of somebody, anybody in whatever field um, that you are moving in, look for examples of people who went before you and at some point just said, I'm going to do it anyway. And you hear their stories. They didn't always have a neat and tidy plan, guarantee, tied in a bow, right? They, at some point, took a leap of faith.
Yes. I think one of the most powerful statements we can make is, I'm afraid and I'm going to do it anyway. I've
Yeah.
many times I've said that along the way, and I agree there's a common thread amongst people who are quote unquote successful. And, but I want to talk a little bit about, well, how can we do this in our lives? That sounds great. We know all these successful people out there, but how can I do this in my daily life? And I'm going to put out one idea as, what about a micro leap? What about a small action? We do this all the time in the community that we work with. We talk about taking a smaller step,
Yeah.
a smaller leap towards the vision that you have for yourself. Tiny progress will build trust in yourself. It will create confidence. And this action starts to pull you out of that paralysis and more into, I'm doing this. So it's
Mm.
just taking that next step without worrying about the entire journey all at one time. What do you think
Yeah.
about
That's a
that,
great.
Lauren?
Yeah, I think that's something that is really compelling, where instead of considering trying to conquer everything you need to do for this change to happen, to just consider what's the next step. So maybe you're not ready to leap all the way to the other side, but I like what you called it, a micro leap, a little mini jump of like
Mhm.
just onto the next stepping stone, and then the next one, because like you're saying, those actions start to build confidence in like, oh, how's this going? Earlier I said that one thing I'm learning while I'm waiting for a perfect plan is there's no better feedback on how my plan is going than actually taking action. So
Yeah.
that step it gives you feedback on how you're doing, but it also gives you confidence, right? It gives you confidence, and it's the action that gives you confidence. And, the old me used to go, I'm going to wait to feel really confident and then I'm going to take action. I'm now learning that it's the other way around. Action comes and then confidence comes that, hey, I took an action. And sometimes it's not even a successful first action, but I took a step and I learned a thing. And
Yes.
so just adding on to another way that has been helpful to me to think about whether I need to move on change is doing the regret test. The
Mm.
regret test is, if I don't do this right now, will I regret this a year from now? Let's think, some period down the line. So give yourself a space where this is meaningful to you, and ask, if I don't take this step right now, will I regret it? Will I regret this a year from now? And again, it may be going back to that pain aversion, push motivation. I don't want to feel regret,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to feel really good about this. So throwing those in as well as part of your consideration certainly has been helpful to me, Holly, on moving to the next step. And then maybe let's just, we spoke a little bit about faith and fear, and whether, how different is fear and faith, because I've heard people say that there's not much difference between faith and fear. Both require you to believe in something you can't see. It's that
Yeah.
50-50. When you were saying, it could go the right way, like, ask yourself, to be afraid of what's to come is to believe in things going wrong. To have faith or trust in what's to come is to believe in things going
Yes.
right. And both of them require you to believe a thing you can't see right now. Isn't it?
So
Like,
might as well, yeah, let's go
my
in the direction of I believe that this
believing.
is going to work, and I believe that I'm going to learn along the way, and
Yeah.
that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about, a couple other tools that we might be able to use as we're navigating change with
Mm-hmm.
confidence. Another mindset shift is that fear is proof that you're on the edge of something meaningful. That
Mm-hmm.
phrase to me, that kind of, it really hits home. Like you're right, you're just so close. You're
I'm
right on
so
the
close.
edge. And that fear is actually something wonderful. It could
Yeah.
be that we're reframing fear as fuel for growth.
Mm-hmm.
What if I fail? What if I grow? And, one other thing is the things that scare us the most are often the things that we need to do the most.
Yeah.
Do you have any other strategies, Lauren, that you want to throw out there to the audience today?
I'm thinking about Mel Robbins. You know, I forget in which one of the Mel Robbins, is it in one of her books or in a talk that she's given? She talks about the 5-second rule. Where if you want a really simple strategy, and I guess this is not, obviously not for big life changing decisions, but certainly in decisions where, because some people, and I've been there, where you can be just really stuck and crippled in indecision over seemingly small changes, right? So for smaller changes where you feel like, oh, I don't know which way to go, Mel Robbins talks about the 5-second rule. Count down and take an action before your brain talks you out of it. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom, just hit it. Whatever that is, you've taken an action. So I've tried it on, there's a couple of things where, as I say, it's not life altering changes, which may require more planning, but certainly in the smaller ones, that's something you could try. And then, of course, I spoke a little bit about creating a compelling vision or visualization of what if it goes right, and what does that look like, that kind of future now experience where you are mentally and emotionally rehearsing for what it's going to be like when the change actually happens. And what that does is it starts to make the future familiar. Because one of the reasons we said we get stuck where we are is because it's comfort of what's familiar. And the reason we don't make the change is the fear of the unknown. But what if you get really familiar with the unknown and you start to make it really compelling and real to you? And that takes me back, of course, to the work we do in NLP, where we're programming the unconscious mind to really hold a picture that's driven by all of your senses. So a really strong visualization, or if you struggle with kind of visualization in terms of pictures, a strong perception, a strong feeling, a strong knowing, using all of your senses, just getting really in touch and starting to just rehearse what that change feels like as though it's already happened, right? Anything else you got, Holly? What's another way that we
I'll,
can
I'll throw
impact
one more
change?
thing out there. And I go back to our working relationship here, which is accountability. But accountability with someone that you trust, because you don't
Mm.
want someone who's going to be a naysayer and poo-poo on your ideas. So
Yeah,
you tell somebody about your leap, and then you've got this external support, external follow through. You can talk with this person and get a little bit of feedback from them, which helps you in turn have a little bit of accountability so that you keep showing up for yourself. So,
awesome.
okay,
Okay.
let's offer one. I'm going to offer one personal challenge for the listeners. You guys, you don't ever have to do anything in here, but here's something. If you want to take a leap of faith, if you are a little bit afraid, can you identify one leap, big or small, that you need to take? And think about it. Just say to yourself, it's the right time. Maybe you write it down, maybe you commit one action to a piece of paper or to the accountability partner or to the visualization like we just talked about. And you could tell us about it in the comments. Tell us about that leap that you took. We want to hear. We definitely want to hear about it.
Yeah.
Lauren, what else do you have? Anything you want to share closing
Well,
this
I think
out?
we just about to close out this session, and I guess maybe as parting words on this is, whatever it is that you desire for yourself, that end goal, the one that you're visualizing, the the outcome that you've been wanting to get to but have been too afraid to make change, like your breakthrough to that is just on the other side of fear. So fear, Holly, just now you said it, you can reframe that and go, I'm on the edge of something great. We spoke earlier about the tool of reframing, where it's like, I'm excited about not knowing exactly what's going to come. I'm anticipating it. I'm curious about it. So, whatever it takes in your reframing, in your thinking, in your sharing, in your planning, to just get over to the other side of that fear, because right on the other side of that is that breakthrough that's just waiting to happen. So I encourage you guys to jump, leap.
Yes.
There we
Let's take
go.
that leap, friends.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you,
Well,
everyone, for watching. We'll be back with another episode of Breakthrough to Best Self soon. Appreciate you guys. See you soon.
thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.